You're listening to CX Passport, the show about creating great customer experiences with a dash of travel talk. Each episode, we'll talk with our guests about great CX, travel, and just like the best journeys, explore new directions we never anticipated. I'm your host, Rick Denton. I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport. Let's get going. Today is a first for me. I currently live in a part of Texas where it's hard to find someone who actually grew up here. Most everyone where I live came from somewhere else, not just in the US, but from across the globe. But that pales in comparison to what it's like for my guest and where she lives. Yes, for the first time, I get to talk with someone who not only lives in Dubai, but was born and raised in Dubai. Today's guest, Vaishali Dialani, marks that first for me. I may think my little portion of Texan has a global influence, but nothing like Vaishali's experienced. Think that might have an influence on Vaishali's perspective on customer experience? You bet so. Currently serving as the head of customer experience for Now Money, the global customer is at the heart of what she and Now Money creates an experience. A vision of a world where everyone has instant access to financial services they can and want to use, no matter who they are, where they are from, or how much they earn. Now that's an experience I can fully support. And with Dubai serving as the crossroads for travel, I'll certainly want to get into Vaishali's travel stories as well. Vaishali, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for a lovely introduction.
I just love hearing my voice talk. No, when I have guests like you, it makes it very easy to create such a wonderful introduction. But let's talk about your journey to where you are now. You didn't start your career doing traditional customer experience work. What did your journey to CX look like?
I think I started about 5 years ago. And when I dived into, the industry after graduating, I wanted to always get into marketing. And so when I started my journey as a marketer, there were different branches of marketing opening up. There was digital marketing. There were different aspects of what you want to really get into, events and different things. And I dived into market research. And little did I know it would land me up where I am currently. I think doors open up for you as opportunities come across. So from a marketing background to a partnerships executive to, a market researcher, I dived into then CRM, which is then being able to manage data and how you analyze data. So I have different aspects of, I didn't know that I was building pillars or learning about the pillars of customer experience. And then I rejoined Now Money back in 2019 as head of communications and engagement. Now, when you're in a startup, you're doing different things and you're wearing different hats. So
Right.
You learn, every day is a learning process. When people ask you, what's your typical day like? I mean, in a startup, there's no typical day really. So I used to do everything and anything that involved related to customers. And, I started off even answering chats to learning about what customers behave like, what is the engagement with us, why they engaged, what's the experience like, try to uncover a lot of things that I didn't know even existed. So a lot of that, I think, led to being able to guide my path to customer experience. And then last year, I was at this point where I felt really saturated. I'm like, I'm doing so many things, but I don't know what's my niche. And that's when my discovery and journey to learn about CX really started off.
Interesting. And so what was that kind of trigger? What was that muse that got you to want to do that? So you discovered it, but why? Why CX? What is it that makes you want to pivot in that direction?
So I was doing a project with IDEO as a UX researcher for our company. And then I also started getting into UX design aspect of things. And I really enjoyed that. But I always felt like there was an element missing because I felt while UX does really influence in the design and experience aspect of things, I still felt like it's not giving me a holistic approach to things. It's only a one aspect design side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to discover what was there out there more, that it was just a very intuitive thing. It didn't really feel at this point where it's like I was really searching for something. My search began because I felt something was missing out and I wasn't able to see it for myself. So that's when I started researching a lot. And I think I'm pretty good at what I do. So I think that led me to finding CX as my path.
I love it. And there's actually a phrase that you had said to me that I'm suspecting is a part of that conversion as well. And it was something that you said it. And so it's customer experience is a core quality within me. I want you to expand on that. What do you mean by that? What does it look like in you? But then I'm also curious, what might it look like in others?
Very good question. Yeah, I remember that during our earlier discussions. And I think when I started, reading about what CX professionals do and who they are, what they look like, or just be able to create an idea persona for in my head of, is that the person I want to be? Is that the person I'm thriving towards?
Mm,
When I was on my search and my journey, what I realized is, a lot of blogs, research said that they're very empathetic as individuals.
mm,
And I realized that and then, you do this, you have a part of you that researches, and then there's a part of you that analyzes and reviews, and then you compare. So I was in that thought and, creating like a table where I'm like, this is me. This is,
oh my
this is not
gosh.
really me. So trying to match and
Yeah.
be a part of like self-discovery journey. And so when I started doing that, I realized I'm very empathetic, and I cross-referenced that back to my years of life and seeing if I have been empathetic as an individual. And it made me realize that whenever I was doing any kind of UX work, I was doing research, I was generally empathetic. Just in professional career, but also personally, I'm a very empathetic person. As a teenager, I knew it was just a one day thing that I realized that I should not be eating animals. So that day I became a vegetarian.
Oh,
It was, so I think a lot of you as a core quality comes from within, and it's an
yeah.
intuitiveness that you have. Another one they, usually say that a CX professional has or is a problem solver. They don't give up on things, they find solution to problems.
Right.
And I think that comes from my grounding and my upbringing as an individual. My parents always say, like, don't give up on things, just try and find a solution for every problem, because there is definitely a solution. It's just that you can't see it, or you haven't worked hard enough to find it yet. So I think that comes from my upbringing as well. And that has shaped my personality to who I am as an individual.
I want to, you said a couple things there that actually caused my brain to sort of snap for a second. And I do want to hear how you see that in others, that third part of the question. But you said something interesting to me there. You talked about, the empathetic nature, the core of the empathy, that heart of the customer. And I wrote a blog back in, I think, 2017 about hire happy people, inspired by Pret a Manger's chief happiness officer, right? So that concept of hire happy people is an important one, and that innate part. But what I found interesting is you said, but then I built a spreadsheet to identify that. And I feel like there's something about customer experience that has this unique blend, and maybe not unique, has a special blend of that heart and the brain. So the fact that you were using a spreadsheet to define how empathetic you had been and what that aspect of it, I think that's something particularly important in the CX world, is being able to blend those two worlds. Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think while you're absolutely right on that, and it does really involve the best of both worlds. You can't
Mm,
just be very emotional and say, right, this is the best thing for the customer and this is what we should do. But you have to look logically, what are the finances like? Is it viable as a solution that you want to do? How long does it take? So you need that brain and that heart to be able to build that right customer experience for your customers 100%. And I think I do that personally a lot.
yeah.
So subconsciously, I think it's a part of my thinking process that has then evolved into everything else I do.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport. Leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure I thought about it before, but the way you said it there, when you're talking about empathy and a spreadsheet, right? Those two worlds you would think are about as opposite as possible. Now, I interrupted you and didn't allow you to answer the third theme of that, and that was that idea of, okay, so how do you see that in others, right? You are not a CX person of one. There are CX people. You're trying to create teams and companies that are customer centric and all of those cliches. How do you find that in others? What does it look like?
It's a hard one, honestly, because it's it's important to break that ice. I think it all starts from being able to break ice with your coworkers
Yeah.
or your customers, because a lot of you do not come from a similar background. So you have to unlearn a lot of things to be able to learn. If you're only stubborn as an individual, you will not really be learning or gaining enough from the other person and never be empathetic towards them. So it revolves around you putting your head down and saying, it's an open heart and it's an open book. I'm just going to learn whatever I can and just brainstorm and pick on other people's brains to see what their experiences have been and why they're saying what they're saying, to then go back and think, right, which category does that person's opinion fall into and why are they saying that? And then you sort of automatically build empathy for them. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a journey, it's a process, but it's an open book process.
You may have seen me take my pen out and write something down. I didn't capture the exact quote. That's the beauty of going back and listening to this. But the idea of having to unlearn what you've learned, right? We all bring our own experiences into a situation, but to have the best empathy. And it's not that you're saying, forget it. I realize unlearn is one element of it, right? But it's that willingness to explore and be willing to accept and understand someone else's experiences. Your experience growing up in Dubai is going to be completely different than my experience growing up in Austin, Texas, USA, right? And so, but that allows us to create a blend and a conversation around customer experience that provides all those different experiences. And I just love that aspect of that. Unlearn really hit my ears in a wonderful way. You have said something else to me. The beauty of a pre-call is we get to talk about some things that I want to bring in here. And you mentioned that, once you've been declared the customer experience person or the customer experience team, that sometimes it can feel like a dumping ground, that people just say, all right, anything related to customer, let's go dump it on that team and they have to deal with it. But that's not really what customer experience is about. So why do you think that happens? And what should a CX person do when they're becoming that customer problem dumping ground?
Yeah, a very good question. I think a lot comes from the culture within the company. It depends, because CX is now trending, is now a huge thing across different organizations. It wasn't there a couple of years ago. Now it's the talk of the town. So I think, and everyone is like, oh, we're customer experience experts. Yeah, great, everyone is, but how you implement it is a whole different ball game. So I think one aspect of things, I'll take the first question and say that why that happens, I think because CX doesn't have its own grounding as a department or silo yet. You'll see organizations, a traditional organization hierarchy saying there's sales, there's marketing, there is data and analytics, but you'll never see customer experience department. It's more of a cost cutting thing. Now it's converting to like, oh, actually they're more important, and that their value add will reflect, maybe not in a short term, but long term impact of the business for sure. I think that's what it happened. One reason that it happens is because we don't have our own little team. And that kind of is a challenge, which is good to have, because then you're a cross-functional department. It opens a lot more doors than people can imagine. And that allows you to actually interact with everyone, because once you're in a silo, you're just very limited to the knowledge of the business. But once you become a cross-functional department, which we are in our organization, and it's a great place to be, you actually are very open with other departments, from product aspect of things, or data, or customer service, or tech. So once you learn from different people, you obviously might have a certain solution, but you might not think that's the best way to implement it in a short term or long term, depending on other factors or inputs from other other departments. Sorry. So I think one, that's why it happens. And the second part of your question is what a CX person can do when that occurs is be open-minded.
Okay. Fitting that what you said before, right? Just come in with the conversation with an open mind. Yeah.
But it's not just that. It starts with being able to speak the same language. What you realize is when you're in different departments and silos, everyone has their terminologies that they use. And they're very restricted to that. That's how they communicate. So I feel like something that we did in our organization was have a similar tone of voice. That's the customer's tone of voice. So you actually talk a language that the customer would talk, and how they would perceive of you. So when you start doing that as a CX professional, you feel everyone's aligned and involved in the process with you and building up that with you. And you don't feel just accountable for that one thing. Everyone has their inputs. And so that accountability from different departments really helps make that challenge or problem of the customer everyone's problem. Or it makes the problem of the business rather than a silo department.
That using, so I've said things like use the voice of the customer to influence change in a company, and I mean that literally. Like if you've got call listening, bring the customer's call in and play it, and those sorts of things. But I like what you're saying there, and that is that customer tone of voice, and make that your internal company way of speaking. That's something I haven't heard someone say before, and not something I've heard. There's something really deep in there, that the idea of how can we make the way we speak inside our company mirror, reflect, be similar to what our customers and how they speak. I really like that approach to it. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I actually realized there was a gap in the way, like obviously I would hear customer aspects of things and then also the business aspect of things. And once you get to listen to the best of both worlds, you realize there is a gap and you can identify that gap very easily. So I think that's how it really started off with me being able to learn about it within our organization and start this whole tone of voice aspect of things with an internal guide of anyone new onboarded knows what language we're speaking and then can really, be able to think a similar process like us, bring their approach and experiences, of course, but then really be able to bring that across.
I think you may have just created your next book title. So I'll let you have that customer tone of voice for a little while. But if I don't see a book coming out from you, then I may have to steal that and write my own book there. But there's something really meaty there, Vaishali. I like that one. Something else that you said, and I can't wait too much longer to get to travel. But this idea of where you talk about cross-functional, I think that's so valuable too, in helping people realize that customer problems aren't just something to hand over to some other group, but rather, and whether it's a CX form, because there are plenty, there are companies that have customer experience teams, others that don't, customer service, whatever that looks like. But there are that idea of, great, I'm so glad you identified that problem, finance. I'm so glad you identified that problem, sales. Great, let's work together on how we can create the right. And so that cross-functional, that co-design, that co-develop, that co-implement, the way you describe that and the way that I've seen that work really well at companies is very, very true. Now, I did say that I was going to pivot into travel, and I can't wait any longer not to talk about Dubai and the fact that you are Dubai born and raised. To me, it's a fascinating place, and I haven't even been there. There's nonstop flights from all over the globe to Dubai now, and it's become this crossroads. So I'm curious, since you've grown up there, how have you seen that influence Dubai itself? But then also, how has it opened up travel opportunities for you?
Interesting question. I think I feel very privileged to be the third generation here, really. And that it all started off with my grandparents moving to Dubai. And if they hadn't, maybe I wouldn't be here. Who knows, So I think it starts off with that. How has Dubai influenced me as an individual? I think it comes a lot from the leadership of this country and, the government, the way we have evolved over the years, and the decisions they take for everything that they do is incredible. How that influences me, I think it really gives me a constant growth opportunity because Dubai is so big and there's always so much happening around here. It really allows you to grow along with the city and the country itself. The more the opportunities, they fall for you as well. So that I think it's a really hot spot for people who want to grow, and Dubai allows you to grow as an individual.
Nice. Very, very nice. I can't even imagine what you've seen and the change that you've seen. Now, we'll talk about this. I'm going to bring you into the first class lounge a little later, but I've got to imagine, just in general, has that exposed opportunities for you to travel as well? And some of the things that you've seen just because of Dubai's physical location, its spirit towards travel, its crossroads element, how has that opened up for you?
I think one thing that I would like to add, and great question, by the way, one thing I'd just like to add in before on the previous point is also, while opportunities have grown here with our physical location, we have the best of Eastern and Western cultures as well, which really helps. So like people from the West come to Dubai because of the opportunities as so as the East, which then allows people who've been here all their life really open up to being able to understand different cultures and be exposed to different cultures and different mindsets and people from different backgrounds. So that has really influenced in my own upbringing, because I see that I can, wherever I go, to the East or the West, I'm very comfortable and I can know how they think or what their culture is like, which really helps me become more empathetic towards them, but also know what to do and what not to do,
Yeah.
in certain places.
Right.
In terms of travel opportunities, it's the best of both worlds, because being in the Middle East, you can travel either way around and you have constant flights. I do not know a world where I can't just pick up a flight overnight and just travel somewhere.
All right, Vaishali, with that kind of travel, and I actually can visualize you walking into the airport there in Dubai and just staring at the departures board and saying, where do I want to go today? But some of those flights are really long. I've got a nonstop flight from DFW to Dubai, right? So, and those are long. And it can be nice to have a little break in the first class lounge. So I'd like to invite you into the first class lounge. Join me here. We'll move quickly and have a little bit of fun here. What is a dream travel location from your past?
I really wanted to travel to Chicago, which I did in May this year.
Ooh, okay. So you just got back there, because we're recording, for those that we're recording this in the July of 2022 timeframe. How was Chicago? Was that your first time to Chicago, you said?
It was, yeah. I actually have
Okay.
a few friends and family there. It was amazing to be there. I've heard it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So I really wanted to travel to Chicago, also because I have a spiritual center there that I really wanted to visit.
Okay.
So it was a dream city. I really wanted to go, and it was exciting. I love traveling, actually. So yeah.
Well, good choice. And I've been to Chicago a few times. I know where it's placed in the U.S. And so May sounds like a good time to visit Chicago. Now, I challenge you, Vaishali, go there in February and see how you feel about Chicago. But
Exactly what it was, May.
yeah, May was a wise choice. What is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
I really want to go to Norway to see the Northern Lights.
The
And visit
Northern
Lava
Lights.
Land.
Yeah, that does sound nice. Somebody was on, now I'm not remembering, but someone was talking about their experience with the Northern Lights. And it's spectacular. One day, you're right. I need to add that to my dream travel location. You've had exposure to, you mentioned, all over the globe. So this question may be a bit challenging, but what is a favorite thing for you to eat?
I mean, being here and raised here, I love Lebanese. It's my go-to food. I need to eat Lebanese cuisine once a week for sure. I really miss that. Like I was in the US and Canada in May, and I really missed my Lebanese food. The falafel and the hummus. It's a blessing, honestly. Once you come here, there's no other world you can get better Lebanese food, I promise you.
Okay. All right. The challenge accepted. This will be interesting. I'll test that out for sure. On the other side, what is a thing your parents forced you to eat, but you hated as a kid?
I still do not like it. I don't hate anything really, particularly. I don't have an extreme aspect to things, but I do not enjoy cottage cheese, which is very strange because as a vegetarian, that's one thing everyone loves.
Right. It's one of your key protein sources right there that you've cut out. I love cottage cheese at this point.
Yeah.
But man, it was not until I was in I think I'm serious about this. I think my 30s or 40s even before I really started to enjoy it. So there's still time. Maybe you'll convert. You may enjoy it.
I think it's a process. Like it takes some food items take a little time to get adjusted to your taste.
That's right. That's right. All right. With all your global travels, what is one travel item, not including your phone, that you will not leave home without?
My jacket. I always feel cold, so I love to carry a shawl or a jacket at all times.
Michelle, we talked about how Dubai is a crossroads and a very global community, but often you've mentioned it can be its own bubble as well. So how do you, but also from a company perspective, how does Now Money break out of that bubble to understand and deliver customer experiences that have such a globally diverse customer base?
Very interesting question. A lot comes from the culture of the company and the willingness to try different things. So I think as a company, we are very open to experimentation. which really gives us the liberty to really try and test things to know what works for the customer and what doesn't work for the customer. Once you get into this culture of being able to research, design, deploy, test, if it works, doesn't work, get feedback, and do this whole process over and over again, you learn a lot about the customers and you know what they like, what they don't like. And it is a continuous process. So while like is bubble where you are really protected and safe in your own space. Now Money was actually one of the first ever fintech companies in the UAE, in the region, to be able to establish themselves the way we have. And that comes from our co-founders a lot. It also allows how there is so much independence within us. So like within the company culture itself, our core values are quite tight. We're quite independent and yet very accountable and ethical as individuals who know that we're working towards a bigger mission, to be able to do something that is more impactful at a much larger scale than just doing a traditional business.
Yeah.
That feeling within all of us in the organization, anyone you meet, you will see that everyone's working for the mission. It's not just a 9 to 5 job for us where we like just working and then going back home. We know that we're working for somebody who will then send money to their families back home. And knowing that we're making somebody's life simpler and more happy. It's a contentment or joy only one can experience when they're at that place.
There is something, I'm going to circle back to something you said at the beginning. It's that it sounds like that heart of empathy is how you're breaking out of that bubble, right? It's that maybe, for example, you and others may not need to be sending money back home, or maybe you are, right? But even without that personal experience of it, but having that heart for the customer who is experiencing that and knowing how it's improving the lives for their families back home helps you want to break out of that bubble and understand what that customer is experiencing. And it sounds like it comes back to that root of empathy.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you won't even believe when we have situations where there are public holidays and there's something that's gone, in the process the user send money or have some financial issues. We're on our toes. It doesn't matter for us. For us, it matters is that person who earns just enough amount to, be able to bring bread and butter back home. Something has happened to his money or, in the process, and he's not able to send things for any other particular reason. How can we really be the first ones he can think of and be on top of his mind?
Boy, that's awesome.
When it comes to being able to be there for the customer, even virtually, right? You can't be physically present with them, but how can you really still serve them and make them feel close and connected to your brand?
Boy, I hear that through and through in what you're describing there. There's something special going on there. Now, I want to ask you a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And it's this idea of companies often think that just tossing out a survey and maybe looking at some scores and that's listening to the customer. All right, well, we sent a survey and we saw some scores in our corporate meeting. Yay, scores went up. Oh, boo, scores went down. Right. But it's a pithy phrase that I often say in my customer experience advisory company: stop, survey, and score. Start, listen, and act. So I'm curious, what does listen to the customer mean to you?
Not everything the customer says is about listening to them. A lot of things they did not even say. That will still happen.
Yeah.
A lot of that comes from your intuitiveness of knowing your product in and out. Putting yourself down at the foot of the customer and saying, would you like that particular experience? A lot of it comes from, understanding data and saying, right, at which journey did the customer not particularly reach out to, but stopped the journey, even though they were just about to complete the transaction or they were just about to do something. So like I said, it's a lot about throwing surveys is not the solution to the problem. That's not the customer experience that anyone else wants anymore. You need to bring that wow factor for the customer. And that comes from them not even knowing that they wanted something and you're serving them already.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I think that is very, very important. And once companies start thinking in that certain particular direction, is like, what's next for the customer? What is being that one step ahead for the customer and saying, I already know what he's thinking, and I will serve it to him in a way that he knows, you will automatically get your scores and your surveys up. Honestly, it's more psychological in the way of things it is, rather than it being, oh, let's just do an NPS score, or let's do a certain score and find out if our customers like us, are more likely to recommend us. I always believe, and I truly believe that, is if your customer has a good experience, engagement, loyalty, and retention will follow.
I think I just want to stop on that, Vaishali. I really like that. If I were to actually just hit the stop button at the end of that quote, I think that's exactly where we need to end. That's a wonderful way to close, that idea of the experience will drive everything else. And a lot of us know it. It's become a cliche. We're starting to believe it, or not starting. Those of us in the CX world have believed it for a long time. We're seeing wider and wider adoption of that as reality, not just as theory, oh, it's up in the air, but really actual practice. What a great conversation, Vaishali. If someone wants to get to know you, or ask you some questions, or get in touch with you, or learn more about Now Money, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, they can definitely check us out on LinkedIn. We're Now Money on LinkedIn, and I'm Vaishali Dialani.
Awesome. I will get that certainly put in the show notes before. Thank you so much for spending time with me here on CX Passport today, Vaishali. It has been, as I expected, a treat for me. And this is actually the beginning of my week. It's the first thing I've done on a Monday morning. And what a great way to kick off the week for me. So thank you for selfishly allowing me to start off my week in such a wonderful way. Great conversation today. I enjoyed it thoroughly, Vaishali.
Thank you so much. It was such a lovely chat. I really enjoyed it. And you're such a great host.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. Make sure to visit our website, cxpassport.com, where you can hit subscribe so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, you can check out the rest of the EX for CX website. If you're looking to get real about customer experience, EX for CX is available to help you increase revenue by starting to listen to your customers and create great experiences for every customer, every time. Thanks for listening to CX Passport, and be sure to tune in for our next episode. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.